This is one of the most common mistakes B2B consultants and agency owners make on sales calls. And it leads to so many deals falling through that otherwise would have closed. And the reason it's so deadly is because it shows a lack of leadership on the side of the vendor, of the consultant, and it allows the prospect to take control of the conversation, which of course is closing kryptonite, and it will result in a friendly virtual pat on the head, an attaboy, and a don't call us, we'll call you at the end of the meeting. So in this video, let's fix it. Let's first identify what the mistake is, how you can take charge of a sales call again and impress the prospect with your expertise. And that way you'll be able to close way more deals and grow your consultancy or agency business to multi-6 or even 7 figures. Quickly, why should you listen to me? My name is Michael Bohannes. For the last 8, almost 9 years, I've been running an advisory business called the Alpha Lead Academy, and we help B2B consultants and agency owners build scalable client acquisition systems and stop depending on referrals. And in the last 5 years, I've taken at least 1,000 sales calls, the majority of which with completely cold strangers, and I've closed about 20% of them. So I learned a thing or two about sales, and I want to share this with you here so you can have a steeper learning curve than I had. So let's get into it. Most B2B consultants and agency owners know that the first part of the call must be the discovery part, asking the prospect questions to understand their problem. By the way, this fact is interestingly not universally known. It still surprises me how many people in this space just get on a call, they allow the prospect to ask questions right from the start and allow the prospect to take control of the call. But that's for another day. But during discovery, it's the prospect who does the bulk of the talking. We ask the questions, and after around 20 to 30 minutes, we have a solid lay of the land of the prospect's challenge. We know what is painful about their situation. We know the constraints they're facing. We understand their strengths and weaknesses, and we know their goals. Okay. And the mistake that now so many people make here is to simply just present their version of the lay of the land. Like, okay, you are in this kind of space. This is your situation. This is what we do. Okay. And that is the huge mistake. They just introduce themselves and their business. They just say, thank you for sharing, John. Can I tell you now a little bit about us? And then they talk about how long they've been in business. They talk about their background, their team size and composition. They talk about which other clients they have served and so on, right? And often they show a pitch deck where they share facts about themselves, and that's all in the hope that the prospects will now be sufficiently impressed with them and award them the contract. And the rest of the call is then spent finding common ground and figuring out how their problem, can be matched with your philosophy and company skill set and what a collaboration then will look like, right? And this is a terrible strategy for 2 reasons, right? First of all, you put the burden of figuring out how your services are the best match for their problem, at least partially on the prospect, right? So the prospect has to now figure out how they can use what you do to solve their problem. And as a result, you give away your alpha status on the call, which means either the prospect will start taking over and assume the leadership role on the call, or they just end up feeling left alone and confused. And in both cases, you will not close. Okay. But now you maybe confuse yourself and say, well, what should I do instead? Am I not supposed to introduce our services to the client? I mean, that's the whole point of a sales call, no? Well, the answer is yes, but much more in a show, don't tell way. And here's what I mean. What needs to come first is an accurate diagnosis of their problem and then laying out the solution to that problem, right? A custom tailored plan for what you propose to actually do with them. The company introduction can come afterwards, maybe, and only if the client asks. And at this point, it's really important to understand that there is a difference between pain and problem. And it really matters a lot, right? Because when you have a pain, let's say you have a stomach ache, you go to the doctor then asks you a few questions, maybe takes a sample, and okay, they conclude this is an ulcer. The ulcer is the problem. The stomach ache is the resulting pain. The problem is always upstream from the pain. Now, example in the consulting world, a frequent pain point that our clients face is, that's why they come to us, they cannot get clients proactively because they believe the content, networking, referrals is the right way to go, but it's not working for them. And as a result, they don't make enough money, which leads to pain. Once they reveal that, I then give them the diagnosis of their problem. And that is, you don't sell enough. You don't abide by the principle sales before marketing. You are prioritizing marketing, i.e. content and networking. And that leads to a vicious cycle. This means that they take whatever they can get, which leads to a lack of specialization, lack of processes, lack of SOPs. As a result, they remain a generalist, and as a result, they need to take whatever they can get. Okay. And when I tell them this now crystallizes their problem. It becomes really clear. I have described their problem. The pain is not enough revenue. And the problem that's underlying is they don't really fully sell. They don't believe that they can sell. And that is now the problem that I've hopefully crystallized for them. They kind of feel it for the first time. Someone has now put words to their pain that explains it and hints at a way out. Very often when you diagnose the problem accurately, you already know what the way out is. What many consultants who don't have much experience with sales do is to just introduce their business to the prospect. This is what we do. This is our background, and here's how we work. And to illustrate why this is so problematic, imagine another doctor analogy. Say you've had some back pain for a while. You spoke to 3 specialists and no one could find the cause. And so you go to the 4th specialist who asks you really deep questions about your posture, daily routines, and work habits. And then after questioning you, now they thank you and they launch into a presentation of their credentials, their history, who they healed in the past, etc. Right? That would be absurd. No, you want the doctor to launch into something like, well, Mr. Smith, based on everything you told me, I believe that the problem is the posture you have at your standing desk. As I've observed, you always tend to slightly slouch to your left, which puts gentle but persistent pressure on the left side of your spinal disc, blah, 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 blah. And so I propose that we verify this by running this and that test, and that you do regular physio and exercises to counteract this tendency, and 1 month from now, we check in again. And if the doctor's diagnosis and therapy suggestion resonates with you and you don't find any holes in their theory, you will be sold on their method and either say yes right away, or if you're slightly skeptical, maybe you can ask more about the background. Within a doctor's case, it's unlikely. And in the consultant's case, it's more likely. So the bottom line is, and back to consulting, the thing that must come right after discovery is a diagnosis of their problem and a suggested solution to their problem. So here's a very concrete example of that. Yesterday, we closed our most recent client, and he told me the following during our discovery phase. He had been trying to sell his executive coaching services by posting and running automations on LinkedIn and reaching out to potential referrers in his network. None of these methods had booked him any sales calls with decision makers. And after some probing on the details for about 20 minutes, I gave him this preliminary diagnosis of his problem. I told him that I believe that he doesn't have a really strong offer. He only sold executive coaching. Hey, I'm an executive coach. Do you need that? Right? And that from a stranger isn't terribly exciting, and it won't get people to book calls with him because it doesn't promise a specific result with a positive ROI. Also, he was selling to 2 very different avatars, corporate VPs and small business founders, right? Very different ICP, which dilutes the message. Then running automations isn't very effective if you haven't sold to a stranger before, because you don't get qualitative feedback, which of course is super key to finding offer market fit. And finally, reaching out to players in an adjacent field in order to get referrals from them isn't very effective if you have not had many clients yet, because they're putting their reputation on the line for you. You need a solid book of business before referrals will work for you. And then I asked him whether my diagnosis resonated with him. He was heavily in agreement with all of this. He kind of had this sense of finally somebody puts words to that. And so as the next step, I outlined my proposed solution to him. Number 1, focus on just one avatar. Create an offer, number 2, that promises positive ROI to the client within certain reasonable timeframes, 6 to 9 months. And number 3, scrap the automated outreach to the prospect in favor of more personalized outreach so that we can get more nuanced feedback on the offer. Again, he very much agreed with this plan. So first, like a doctor, I gave him my diagnosis, then I offered a remedy roadmap, and in both cases, I always checked in with him to see if he agreed and whether he had any questions. And he, of course, did have a lot of questions, especially how we work and what our collaboration would look like. And then he closed and paid on the call. Okay. And in his case, I didn't even have to tell him the background of my business. He was just heavily sold on the roadmap. In other cases, when the prospect is a bit more skeptical, I sometimes have to talk about my background, who I am, how long we've been around, etc. But in most cases, it's not necessary. So you see how it's so much more important to just outline the possible solution for the client that shows that you've listened to them and to offer a plausible way out of their predicament, much more so than it is to introduce yourself first. So why is this better? Because you lead. You take them by the hand and you explain to them the nature of the problem. Skillfully, you combine their concrete situation, a specific situation, with your expertise. You make this connection yourself. And now you're able to give them hope, right? That a path towards a solution might exist after all. They were about to give up hope, right? And you give them a plausible, credible, and satisfying explanation for why their past attempts at solving the problem and alleviating the pain have failed. Either they have misdiagnosed the problem, or they applied a wrong solution to an accurately diagnosed problem. And by the way, just as an aside, I believe that nothing builds rapport more intensely than this. Them having the feeling that you understand them, that you're an expert in your field, and that you will help them solve their problem and help remove their pain. This builds far more rapport than bantering about sailing or the kids or the latest football match at the start of the sales call. Rapport comes from feeling understood and in safe hands. So I hope this difference is clear now. You don't present them your world after they presented theirs. Instead, you go straight to the solution of their problem. And by the way, this is exactly the reason why we skip ads on TV or when we listen to a podcast. A generic sales pitch is boring. A customized, personalized sales pitch that really addresses all your pain points is riveting, right? We cannot get enough of it. We want to know more. We want to know all the details because it's personalized to us. It's highly relevant. And if it comes from a place of genuine expertise, it gives us hope that this time around, we can solve the problem. Now, let's look at another example to drive this point home. One of our clients helps companies from one country to expand in another country. And in one case, a prospect he had on a call mentioned that so far they had been using local agents in the destination country, but these agents had been unreliable and they had churned away within a few months. My client doesn't have an agency model. He's not an agent. Instead, what he does is to do the lead hunting on his own. He has some methods to do that, and then introduces these leads to the client's head office. The client's head office then closes the deal, and now they can gauge how fast a permanent hire will pay for themselves. So it's much more of a market entry rather than like market growth, right? It's a different model. Okay. And what my client then does correctly is to present to the prospect his path as the superior one, respectfully, but confidently. He needs to say, and he says something like, one of the reasons this hasn't been working out for you so far could be the fact that agents have different clients and have no particular incentive to put in an effort for you. And I've seen this over and over, which is why we are adopting this different model, which works so much better. We follow a different model, describe it, gauge what the prospect think of this approach. What do you think, John? Does this method sound appealing to you? And now both parties can discuss this specific flavor, this specific solution to their problem. Because what happens if you don't do it this way and instead you just present your business to them? Now, the assertive ones among your prospects, they will take now charge of the call and proceed to grill you. It's like, okay, well, thank you for this presentation. How would we do this? What do you propose we do here, etc.? And they are now in charge. Whoever asked the question is in charge. They will have to come up in their mind with a way of working with you. And after they have some clarity in their mind about doing that, you will have become an applicant, a freelancer, a body to throw at the problem to be implemented as a solution. The figuring out the solution, that's the hard part. That's the kind of work that gets rates of $500 an hour and above. And it's this ability that is valuable, right? Implementing the solution is $100 an hour activity. So that's where prospects now start to haggle you down from $115 an hour to $95 because the budgets are tight right now, right? So the assertive prospects will now take control of the call, come up with a solution, start vetting you and your background, and try to negotiate your hourly rate downwards. Now, the less assertive prospects will not take control of the call. They would just go, well, okay, thank you very much. It's good food for thought. Can you send me something in writing? I will need to think about this. And everything goes south. They might think, well, sure, I like this person, but I'm not quite sure. I need someone to show me the way, but I'm not sure if this approach is going to work for me. That's kind of their conversation in their heads. Both of these scenarios, when the prospect assumes the alpha position on a call and the prospect who's feeling uncertain and confused, both of those are, of course, totally deadly for closing the deal. By the way, quick aside, it's not like after 30 minutes of talking to them, you will have grasped their problem in all its nuances. You'll be offering the perfect solution to them. You can't. And the prospect knows that. Instead, what you're offering here is a preliminary high-level analysis based on 30 minutes worth of information and a suggestion of which direction the solution should go. By thinking on your feet, you show the client that you're able to provide a solution and are able to adapt to changing circumstances. So, in summary, this needs to be the order of things after the discovery part. Ask for permission to share how you would solve the problem. Give a high-level diagnosis of their problem and why what they have tried in the past hasn't worked. Get their buy-in on the accuracy of this diagnosis. Super important. Don't launch into a solution if you have not gauged from them whether they agree with you. Because if you disagree, then figure out a way on a solution method that would work for them. Okay? Now, after you have their buy-in, propose a solution. This is what we propose to do. Again, make it very concrete. How will you work with them? What are the exact steps? You will take them through. Check if they have any further questions. They may have some questions about your background and qualifications, but if you've done the previous parts well, those will be pretty unimportant now. The better you are at these steps, diagnosis, high-level solution, and the steps of working with you, the less they will question your past or the size of your team, etc., all of that. At some point, they will start now asking about the pricing. Now, show willingness to share, but first ask whether they believe that this solution is right for them right now. Best to ask that on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think this is the right solution for you right now? If they're at 8 or below, ask what's missing for it to be a 9 or a 10. If they say they don't know how much it'll be, ask where they are if price weren't an issue. Don't pitch the price unless they're at 9 or 10. And if they're at 9 or 10, then you share the investment. And then you objection handle until they close. Now, this diagnosis solution pitch frame that I'm advocating for, it's not the easiest thing to do because there are few prerequisites for you to pull this off successfully. First of all, you need to stop thinking of yourself as a supplicant. I've seen so many sales calls. We also review our client sales calls. So I've seen many of them. And you are not a job candidate for them. So many people put themselves into this supplicant position where they just say, so this is what we do, and we'd love to help you, we'll love to support you. And the prospect then asks questions like, what have you done in the past that shows that you know how to do this, etc. You're not a job candidate for them, okay? You're an expert advisor. You are meeting the prospect as equals. Your role, number 2, on the sales call is not to close them, at least initially. Instead, you're only there to find out the truth, whether your services are a fit for their problem, because they might not be, in which case you should not close them. Think journalist. Like if I have somebody on a call and they are dead certain that they do not want to spend the time to build their own systems, they want to work with a lead gen agency, I say, okay, go with peace, but go, because this is not what we offer. I try to convince them that it's not the right path for them if they have not sold to strangers before, but if they insist, I don't pitch them. Then point number 3, you need to be really competent in what you do, right? If you're very, very early stages, you will probably not be able to pull that off because you need the confidence to disagree with the prospect if it's needed and present them with an alternative viewpoint, right? You also, number 4, need to be willing to lose the deal. If you're too desperate to close, it'll get way harder. Number 5, you need to have your own unique way of working, a methodology, a modus operandi. You cannot be so flexible that you bend in the slightest wind that the prospect blows you away. For example, if somebody said, well, I want to work with an agency, and we say, well, we can do that too, it's not a good idea. And then finally, you need to be relatively quick on your feet, right? Take good notes, listen well, be very present, and show them in your pitch how you are taking all of their concerns into account and summarize how your version of the service will alleviate all of their pain points. There's a real art. You have to really do good notes taking during the call. So you identify their 3, 4, 5 biggest pain points. And then as you take them through the solution, you say, and here, this part will alleviate your pain point number 1. And towards the end, we do this. This will fix pain point number 2, etc. That is when you really shine and when the pitch becomes, wow, this is perfectly custom tailored just for us. Now, the good news is that all of these above prerequisites, although they are a little bit tricky, you can develop them, even if you don't have them now. I used to be particularly intimidated by the last point of thinking quickly on my feet. This is not my natural forte. I'm a bit of a ponderer and a ruminator, but with more and more experience, it just happens naturally. So don't give up. Keep going, keep working on yourself, put in your 10,000 hours, and you'll get there and develop all of these traits gradually over time. Now, I acknowledge there could be one objection to this idea of presenting the prospect with a solution, a concrete solution just for them. Right? You could say, well, I'm giving away value for free. This is what people normally pay me for. It's a fair point, but it's unlikely to be a real problem because the phase where you present your solution will be 10 to 15 minutes long at most. And remember, we just did a comprehensive discovery session with them for at least 20 minutes. And you have to keep some space for the commercial pitch and objection handling towards the end. And so in 10, 15 minutes, it's not like you'll be giving out such incredible insights that will solve all of their problem. You'll just describe how you will help them solve their problem. And if they ask a bit too many questions where you start feeling that, the prospect is trying to get some expertise out of you, trying to turn this into an advisory call, then you say, John, those are all great questions, but I wouldn't be giving them justice if I gave you a, 2 bullet point answer right now. This is exactly what we will be covering in our first 2 weeks together. So let's discuss whether you believe that my approach that I just described is right for you right now. Also, if indeed your solution is so good, then it's very likely that they will be grateful to you for this insight and they want to work with you. This is not how consulting works, that all you need is an idea and now you can implement on your own. The implementation, as you probably know, I'm sure you know, is usually long and difficult, and just giving them the idea is of course of some value, but it's not really going to move the needle for them. So that is all to say, don't worry about giving value away for free. Think of it more as giving a taster of how deep your expertise and how high quality your thinking is. It's something of an audition for you. So that's it. Please don't just introduce your business to the prospect on a sales call. Instead, show them the roadmap of how you will solve their problem specifically and infuse it with your unique take and methodology. And one thing that I found is that this problem often affects middle-aged and older consultants because they tend to have a little bit more personal ego tied up in this business. So if that is you, watch this next video about the 3 sales and marketing mistakes experienced B2B consultants make.